A new challenger comes.
Arcana Heart, Blaze Blue, Darkstalkers, Dead or Alive, Fatal Fury, Guilty Gear, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Killer Instinct, King of Fighters, Marvel vs. Capcom, Neo Geo Battle Coliseum, Persona 4 Arena, SNK vs. Capcom, Soul Calibur, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Super Smash Bros., Tekken, Under Night, In Birth, X-Lite, and Virtua Fighter. I have played all of these games, and the most popular among them by far is Street Fighter. Why? Street Fighter is a mediocre fighting game series, and I say that knowing full well that it has contributed to the fighting game genre's explosion of popularity more than any other fighting game from the early 90s to this very day. I may as well be saying that Final Fantasy is a mediocre role-playing game series, or that Mario is a mediocre platforming game series. It's really just that iconic. So how can I complain about Street Fighter when everyone else is happy with it? Easy. I recognize argumentum ad populum. I understand that just because everyone else is content with something doesn't mean it shouldn't be changed or that it even deserves to exist in the first place. The sad reality is whether we're talking about fighting games or real life, the popular majority run the show, and the advantage of getting on the bandwagon almost always outweighs maintaining your position. In truth, yes, I do make things harder on myself by refusing to concede, but it's never contrarianism that arouses this resistance, it's questions. And one of the biggest questions that linger on the periphery of my mind just heavy enough to get me thinking is, could the popular majority be wrong? I feel this is an important concept to ruminate on, and it of course carries especially far-reaching implications when applied to society at large. But since denial is a stickler for details, let's look at a very small example. Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and the Street Fighter series at large. First off, there are plenty of good things to say about Street Fighter 4. It features a unique visual style, great animation, a slick menu system, tons of characters, and oodles of unlockables. All of this is probably enough to sell most people, and likewise it's about as much as any given GameSpot or IGN review will have to say. However, my problems with Street Fighter begin with its lack of one of the most basic, fundamental things I look for in a fighting game, a diverse cast of unique characters. Say whatever you want about their personalities or backstories, I'm sure they're interesting, but I'm playing a fighting game to ask the eternal question, who would win? I'm not going to pit Ryu against Ken. I'm going to pit Batman against Spider-Man.
Fight.
Just not your day, pal.
Both of these characters have totally unique abilities and approaches to combat, which is what makes them so interesting to watch and all the more enticing to play. Just look at what is arguably the most popular fight scene in all of anime. Rock Lee versus Gaara from Naruto. My first problem with Street Fighter is that almost every character is functionally the same. Yes, they have their differences, some of them handle a little faster or slower, and I understand that they're supposed to represent different styles of martial arts, but Street Fighter isn't designed to expose the technical side of those martial arts styles. This is a game where throwing fireballs is expected, for fuck's sake. It's like the entire roster of Street Fighter are just slight variations of Heihachi from Soul Calibur. Though, to be fair, some characters have some really interesting gameplay mechanics. Gen is uniquely able to switch between two stances, Mantis and Crane, each of which offer him different movesets which are used interchangeably to handle different circumstances. Vega is uniquely able to drop and retrieve his mask and claw if he gets hit too much in battle. If his claw is dropped, he receives a noticeable decrease in range and damage output. If his mask is dropped, however, his damage output increases at the expense of a defense penalty. Dan is uniquely able to taunt in 4 different ways depending on how he moves. The first is useless, 2 can be clutch utility moves, and the 4th is an extraordinarily long drawn-out super combo that does no damage whatsoever. The surprise twist, however, is that it can be cancelled at almost any time into an ultra combo. And finally, Hakan is uniquely able to apply oil to his body, which literally makes him more slippery by increasing his speed and allowing him to cancel moves he would not otherwise be able to cancel normally. The oil wears off fast, however, so he's been given moves which put space between him and his opponent so that he can reapply before diving back into battle. All of these are great ideas for character mechanics, but this is only 4 characters out of 39. 44 as of Ultra Street Fighter 4. You can argue all you want about how Ryu is totally different from Ken, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to sell a character on the ideas of anti-air, mix-up, drawback, projectile bypass, fewer 360 spin input commands. Fuck all that! No, it should be as goddamn simple as... What?! He fights with a giant lizard?! I'm gonna play that guy. Why would you play Ibuki when you could play Taki, who actually fights like a ninja? Why would you play Blanca when you could play Bowser, who actually fights like a monster? Why would you play M. Bison when you could play Terumi, who actually fights like a villain?
Retaliating fat taste the sting. Can't get enough. You're dead.
And when I say Terumi from BlazBlue fights like a villain, I mean he's the only one of 26 characters who literally has more super moves than he has normal moves, which is entirely playable thanks to his drive ability, which allows him to steal power meter off of his opponents. Again, an ability no one else has but him. That's not to suggest that he's overpowered though, because everyone else has an entirely unique way of fighting too. Though to be fair, once again, we really didn't need 3 robots and 3 puppet masters. But then right there's the difference! Unlike Street Fighter, the palette swaps are in gross minority to the rest of the cast, which are entirely different. You could point to Mario and Luigi in Super Smash Bros., or Cassandra and Sophitia in Soul Calibur, but they're not the rule, they're the exception, and these exceptions are best emphasized through their unique controls. So let's take a bit of a rough sidestep into the topic of button economy. My second problem with Street Fighter is overlooked by so many people, but it's frustratingly obvious to me. You have so much real estate on your controller to create button combinations and movesets, but so much of it is wasted with this counterintuitive setup. What have we got here? 6 buttons, 1 light punch, 1 light kick, 1 medium punch, 1 medium kick, 1 heavy punch, 1 heavy kick. What kind of sense does that make? Why would I ever kick instead of punch or punch instead of kick? Because certain characters use certain punches in certain ways? Fuck that. You know who I feel sorry for? I feel sorry for the animators at Capcom, who are going fucking bonkers because they're being told to animate 1 character punching with her feet, and 2 more kicking with their hands. Seriously though, what an inconvenient and wasteful setup. It's not as if every single button is loaded with moves either. Some are only useful for 1 or 2 and then pointlessly thrown into a super combo and ultra combo, because if they weren't there they'd hardly get pressed at all. Compare this to Super Smash Bros. The A button is used for normal attacks. Modified with the control stick, you get a minimum of 3 on the ground, all of which can be charged into smash attacks. On top of that, you get an additional minimum of 4 normal attacks in the air. This means that with the A button alone, you have access to at least 10 different moves for every character. Compare that to Street Fighter, where the X button or light punch grants you a crouching punch, a standing punch, a neutral jumping punch, and a diagonal jumping punch. That's 4 moves. Add a Shoryuken, Hadouken, Shinku Hadouken, Metsu Hadouken, Collarbone Breaker, and Solar Plexus Strike, and then you'll have 10. But by that point, you're already 5 moves shy of completing Ryu's entire move list. Add another 4 punches and kicks for the remaining 5 buttons, 2 throws and a focus attack, and you have 28 moves left to sort out. And if you can safely assign 10 moves to 1 button, then that means you only need 4 buttons total to play Ryu. 6 buttons is too many! It adds nothing to the game to assign core moves to additional buttons farther away from home position. Fighting games are the standard pick-up and play games. Intelligently economizing the space you have to work with on the controller is nothing, if not an advantage, and nothing spells it out clearer than Soul Calibur. Yes, Soul Calibur is a 3D fighting game, so yes, it's expected to compensate for a third dimension. But Street Fighter doesn't need to compensate for anything, and yet its control layout looks childish by comparison. Check this out. You want to know how to play Soul Calibur? I'm going to teach you in 10 seconds. Ready? Here we go. Tilt this to move, double tap to run. Square swings horizontally, triangle swings vertically. Press circle if they get close. Hold X to block, and if you press down while you do it, you'll block low attacks. You can press square and X at the same time to grab. Done! You know what you just did? You just learned how to play Soul Calibur without button mashing! Want to learn what makes your character special? Open up the move list and check out how Soul Calibur puts Street Fighter to shame for a second time with a whopping 32 moves using the square button alone. That's almost Ryu's entire move list on one button. All total in Soul Calibur 2, Nightmare has a staggering 162 moves. And according to Street Fighter logic, that would require a controller with an insane 28 buttons to play. And yet Soul Calibur intuitively accomplishes it in 4. Still not convinced? Do you think Super Smash Bros. Is more of a non-traditional fighting game? Do you think Soul Calibur shouldn't count because you can't 8-way run in Street Fighter? Fine. Blaze Blue. You can't argue with this. Look at this! This is all you need to play the game. A, B, C, D with D for drive. From A to C, your moves are stronger, but from C to A, your moves are faster. D is your character-specific utility button. Done, enough said. Sure, there's more to it than that, but you could totally play Street Fighter with this layout. No question. And if you did, you'd have a whole 4 shoulder buttons to assign shortcuts to. Moving on, my third problem with Street Fighter is its complete and utter failure to incorporate even the most basic of improvements other fighting games have made to the formula over the years. One of the most basic ways you can make fights more interesting is to make them more dynamic, and easily the best way to make fights more dynamic is to give players more flexible controls. Street Fighter does not have flexible controls. Ignore the fact that it takes more flexible fingers than necessary to combo directly from face buttons to shoulder buttons. Seriously, just try pressing BYRB as fast as you can from home position, it's not comfortable. No, in Street Fighter, you don't play Ryu like a Street Fighter, you play Ryu like an abacus. You've been knocked prone. Stand up exactly where you fell. Advance within acceptable attack range. Double tap towards your opponent to move exactly 1 meter forward. Double tap again to move exactly 1 meter forward. Double tap a third time to move exactly 1 meter forward. Press forward and jump up exactly 15 degrees towards your opponent. It's fucking ridiculous! Sprinting. It's in all of these games. Why not Street Fighter? Oh, well, Street Fighter is a highly technical spacing. It's super important to... Oh, yeah, because when I think of Street Fighter, I think of hopscotch. Look, I get the idea of spacing. Characters like Hakumen from Blaze Blue are large, slow, and already compensate their lack of speed with power attacks they can land without getting too close. It's a means of balance, but you could also rationalize it as Hakumen's a goddamn cyber samurai and that's just how cold and precise he is. Not only that, but as a means to close a gap quickly, dashing is faster than sprinting usually. It could be argued that dashing characters like Carl, Clover, and Hazama are intended to be very fast, but they lack the endurance for extended sprints. This, compounded with the relatively complicated approaches to combat, make them among the more intentionally difficult characters to use. Why then does most of the roster sprint? Because dashing is an imposed difficulty, and it isn't always appropriate. For one thing, dashing demands a significant amount of attention to be paid to a character's distance from their opponent. If your dash puts you too close, you could move in range of an easy poke, which could drastically backfire in your face. If your dash isn't close enough, your attack could whiff entirely and give your opponent an opening. The advantage of sprinting is that with only a single double tap, you can cross the stage to your opponent and at any moment interrupt your sprint with an attack or even a preemptive backdash. Not knowing if your approaching opponent is going to attack you, jump over your head, or stop before running into the trap you had laid for them isn't the only thing made possible by the inclusion of sprinting. It also contributes to another thing conspicuously absent from Street Fighter. Momentum! It's in all these games, why not Street Fighter? There are a lot of things that make Street Fighter feel sterile, but none of them are quite like the lack of momentum in a fighting game. It's not like the animators didn't try either, they clearly put their all into making some awesome cutscenes and ultra combo animations. But none of it translates into the actual fighting game mechanics. The lack of sprint is just one way this is apparent, because when you had some additional speed behind your jump would actually take you further, allowing you to cover distances your opponent might not expect, and more easily clear projectiles that would normally demand unnecessarily precise timing. Simultaneously, you'd think your attacks would carry you forward, but most attacks don't move your character at all, resulting in combos that more often than not abort themselves because you push the opponent out of the way of your follow-up. The same can be said for Blaze Blue. However, in Blaze Blue, the concept of revolver combos was introduced, which encouraged the idea of comboing up from light attacks, into medium attacks, into heavy attacks. The purpose of revolver combos is multifold. First off, if you start with light attacks, then your combo begins as fast as possible. Secondly, your slower medium attacks can be landed because the stun inflicted by lighter attacks gives you the time to pull them off. And thirdly, your heavy attacks can be landed because your range increases with the use of the character's personal weapon of choice, something Street Fighter largely ignores. The point here is not the lack of weapons though, it's the difference between combo potential in Blaze Blue and Street Fighter. Street Fighter's attempts at super combos and ultra combos seem to be elements Street Fighter wants to possess in name only.
This is the end for you!
whereas games like Killer Instinct aim to make walking up and down the opponent's face the entire point of the game, Street Fighter is content just to throw a punch or kick here and there, which would be an entirely fair approach to combat, were it not for the lack of momentum. Can you see it? Can you see it? Mario slides to a stop, Nightmare slides to a stop, Ragna slides to a stop, Ryu doesn't slide, he just stops and starts. That's Street Fighter! There's no flow to combat at all! And nowhere is that more apparent than the lack of Ukemi. It's in all of these games, why not Street Fighter? If you don't know what Ukemi is, here's the quick and dirty version on Wikipedia. It's the art of knowing how to respond correctly to an attack and often incorporates skills to allow one to do so safely, such as tumbling. The basic idea as it appears in fighting games is pretty simple. A neutral Ukemi allows a character who's been knocked prone to recover quickly into standing position if they can time a button press the moment they hit the ground. This helps retain momentum in combat, but also allows players to choose when they recover into standing position, which can interrupt attackers who are already at the advantage of having downed their opponent. Admittedly, you can already do this to some degree in Street Fighter, but the best kind of Ukemi is a rolling Ukemi. A rolling Ukemi allows a character who's been knocked prone to move while they're helpless on the ground. There are usually distance limitations, but it allows players who've been knocked prone the advantage of recovering from a position their opponent might not expect, potentially setting up a comeback. In Soul Calibur, characters do not get invincibility frames when they're knocked prone, so prone characters are vulnerable at all times. However, since the most reliable way to damage prone enemies is to use vertical attacks, follow-ups are usually easy to avoid with 45-degree rolls to the side. These can be combined with one additional 45-degree roll or a somersault towards or away from your opponent. In Super Smash Bros., due to the percentage-based damage system, the frequency of knockdown and stun duration scales accordingly, so there is no neutral Ukemi. However, prone characters are still able to somersault through enemies left or right to recover at either a safe distance or even behind their attacker. And while Super Smash Bros. Ends rounds through ring out and Soul Calibur ends rounds through ring out and HP depletion, Blaze Blue ends rounds purely through HP depletion. This means that just like Street Fighter, every stage is flanked by walls. And if you have ever played a fighting game like this, you know full well the frustration of being beaten into a corner with absolutely nowhere to go and only the vain hope that you can break out of a combo and get away from that fucking wall. In Blaze Blue, you can Ukemi away from the wall. Ukemi makes almost too much sense as a gameplay mechanic not to include it, but it's even better emphasized by this single point which you can still find on Wikipedia. Correct Ukemi will allow the Uke to suffer the least amount of damage possible from a fall. If done correctly, the force of hitting the ground will be spread out along non-critical parts of the Uke's body. By properly doing Ukemi, the Uke can roll out of danger and move into their next course of action without being damaged too much by hitting the ground. Now let me ask you this. We have a game called Street Fighter, featuring, as of yet, 44 different martial artists, known world-round for their absolute mastery over their individual disciplines, and they have been training for years, and years, and years to make it to where they are. And every single time they fall down, they stand right back up exactly where they fell. Let me get this straight. Street Fighter has been around since 1987, and since then we've had Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Hyper Street Fighter 2 Anniversary Edition, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, Street Fighter Alpha, Street Fighter Alpha 2, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter X, Street Fighter X Plus, Street Fighter X Plus Alpha, Street Fighter X2, Street Fighter X2 Plus, Street Fighter X3, Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 3 Second Impact, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and now an Ultra Street Fighter 4. And now that we'll be getting a Street Fighter 5, how much do you want to bet that there won't be rolling Ukemi? And I didn't even list all the subversions or crossover games. The very first Super Smash Bros. Game had a rough idea of Ukemi, and after Soul Blade, the very first Soul Calibur game had Ukemi. And I could be dishonest and say that the very first Blaze Blue game had Ukemi, but the truth is, Arc System Works had at least 9 Guilty Gear games under their belt before they implemented Ukemi in the first Blaze Blue game. And that leads into my final point. Guilty Gear likely wouldn't exist unless players had an itch Street Fighter couldn't scratch. It's blatantly obvious that Guilty Gear takes several cues from Street Fighter to begin with. The biggest homage I feel is one of Soul Bad Guy's signature moves, Volcanic Viper, which is performed identically to that of a Shoryuken. Not only that, but many elements of the character Zangief are mirrored in BlazBlue's Iron Tiger. Both characters are grapplers, which perform slams with multiple 360s, and are known in their respective games for being able to dish out more damage than any other character in a single attack. And as much as I still feel that 360s and Shoryukens are some of the most frustratingly counterintuitive control stick movements you could be regularly expected to perform in games where tilting up makes you jump, I can understand that they came from a good place. But if Arc System Works was content to imitate characters and concepts in Street Fighter, then why'd they even make Guilty Gear in the first place? Well, other than being a huge heavy metal tribute, I think the answer is obvious. The basics that made Street Fighter popular could be significantly improved. Compare the original Guilty Gear to the most recently released Street Fighter at the time, Street Fighter 3 Second Impact. While Street Fighter had 2 more playable characters, absolutely no Guilty Gear characters could be confused for each other. There was no Yin and Yang, no Ken and Ryu, and Sean, and Akuma, whatever! Every single Guilty Gear character was distinctively different, and there was a lot more diversity than unarmed guy with Shoryuken, Hadouken, and or Whirlwind Kick. You had a guy with a flaming sword, a girl who fought with her hair, an insane surgeon, a ninja, a pirate, a one-armed samurai, a fucking robot! Even if you took all the most unique and interesting characters from Ultra Street Fighter 4 and left out the rest, you still would not have a more diverse and interesting roster of characters than the original Guilty Gear. And this is all before we get characters like Ino, Aba, and Bedman. And if that alone didn't sell you back in 1998, then you must not have played it at all, because if you did play it, then you'd learn that the gameplay also takes it up to 11. With the addition of Sprint, the game obviously moves a lot faster without going all the way up to Killer Instinct levels of punishment. Guilty Gear recognizes that trading hits for combos is an obvious way of raising the stakes. The game of footsie suddenly has a whole lot more tension if the character you're fighting against is literally prepared to air juggle your ass into space with a guitar. It's a whole lot more satisfying too. Many great additions such as Ukemi, super modes, and instant kills would eventually be truly realized in the BlazBlue series, but the foundation is rooted in Street Fighter. And yet Street Fighter has largely refused to change over the nearly 30 years it's been around. Oh, it certainly wants to change, but it never truly commits. Capcom obviously likes the idea of flowing combo-based combat, but refuses to change Street Fighter's core gameplay to complement it. Capcom obviously likes simpler control schemes, but fails to realize that there's room between extremes. Capcom obviously likes unique and interesting characters, but what do the polls say?
Before my psycho power.
And right there's your biggest problem. Everyone else is content with the same shit getting recycled over and over again. And this is what baffles me the most. Remember that Street Fighter V teaser trailer they put up? Remember how many people flipped their shit because it announced that it was going to be exclusive to PS4? You know what got my attention? The fact that anyone cared. Because as far as I could tell, that entire fight between Ryu and Chun-Li didn't showcase a single attack, move, or ability they didn't already have in some version of previous games. Oh, there's destructible stages now? Whoop-de-fucking-doo. Even their E3 2015 trailer didn't showcase any new characters. Both Birdie and Charlie are characters you've played before. They could just as easily have been dropped into Super Ultra Street Fighter 4 Turbo Alpha X7 Plus Anniversary HD Remix Edition. But no! Now you can pick up a whole new game where the character roster is smaller, since they probably phased out Yin and Yang again to be repurchased for the 3rd time when they inevitably re-release Street Fighter V! Compare this to BlazBlue Chrono Phantasma's teaser trailer. Boom! Several brand new characters and every returning character gets new moves. Sure, the trailer's a fucking lie in that it deceitfully advertises a character that won't be on the fucking disc until the re-release, but I never said that Arc System Works weren't assholes. They are. Fuck you, Arc System Works. I'm not buying your Day 1 DLC. My point is that even if I liked Street Fighter, why would I give a damn about Street Fighter V? It's old Street Fighter characters doing old Street Fighter moves in old Street Fighter ways. I have no doubt they'll add new characters, but how many cookie-cutter cutouts are going to be dropped between Ultra SF4 and SF5, and then reintroduced as a cheap incentive to buy a new version of the game with only one new character?
It's Cammy! You keep everybody waiting, Capcom, for this long, months and months, and this is what you give us. A PC modded version of Cammy. It's so bad, dude. It's so bad. It's already been done. We've seen the dolls and they're charged characters. We've seen it before. I don't know what I was expecting, man. I expected something new, different. After keeping us waiting for months and months and months, hyping it up, keeping us waiting for so long, and then you drop this. It's not good, man. You know what, yeah, I knew Capcom was broke, but I didn't know it was this bad. Like, whatever, dude, I'm done.
Why would I care unless I was already someone who is satisfied with the bare minimum features? They're in all of these games, why not Street Fighter? Did you know that Ultra Street Fighter 4 has fewer modes than any of these? And Ultra Street Fighter 4 is the latest game in its series. These aren't. You've got Arcade versus Online Challenge and Training. That's it? That's all you have? Survival mode! Adventure mode! Super Sudden Death mode! Come on! You skipped all these basic additions to add a Bell, Goken, and Rufus? Fuck off! Look, what it all comes down to is this. I can understand why you might like the game. Really, really I can. Maybe you have a particular fascination with martial arts. Maybe you're big into fighting game tournaments. Maybe Thunder Thighs is your waifu. That's okay. I don't share your sentiment, but you're completely free to like the game if that's your thing. I know a lot of people grew up with Street Fighter, but nostalgia should never, ever, ever impact one's judgment of a thing.
Hey everybody, it's Clements, and I'm here with Charles Agnette from the Xbox team. Hi Charles.
What's up, Ryan?
And we are here to talk about a little grudge match between Street Fighter 4 and BlazBlue.
Who will come out on top? Fight!
Even though I love both games, today I'm going to be arguing on the side of BlazBlue, and Charles is going to be talking about Street Fighter 4, and we're going to butt heads over this.
Yeah, because clearly Street Fighter's a better game.
What's great about BlazBlue is that it combines this awesome cast of characters with an incredibly balanced fighting system that mixes a lot of the stuff that Guilty Gear had, which was the developer's previous franchise, with a lot of much more approachable strategies. So you have the drive system, which basically allows characters to do something cool with just a button press, but you also have all the advanced techniques and combos that you would expect from a really deep fighting game. And it really is that cast that drives it home for me. I think that the Street Fighter cast gets really repetitive. Even though they're the original fighting game cast, I still think that BlazBlue has it in that regard.
Okay, so it sounds to me like you're a little jaded and maybe have no respect for gaming history. There's a basic set of command entries that will perform almost all the moves in the game. I saw at one point there was a giant bow stick flying around the level independent of a character, and I didn't know what was happening.
You can do the similar command inputs for other characters, but you are right in that a lot of the characters in BlazBlue have independent control systems that you need to learn as a separate entity from, the general control scheme. So for example, one character, yes, she has a flying bow staff that's flying around the ring. Another character is actually controlling a puppet at the same time that you're controlling the character. So there's definitely harder, more difficult characters to use in BlazBlue, and I agree with that, but I think that gives players who are really hardcore about fighting games something to learn, something to master, and it makes each and every character in BlazBlue an entirely different fighter.
Moving on from that, I guess one of the things I really appreciated about Street Fighter was the graphics. Plus you get tiny little pictures and titles that unlock as you do sweet stuff in the game, and I really don't see how that can be beat.
I think what BlazBlue does really well is begins to connect a community of gamers that was previously not so connected. Whereas Street Fighter has mass appeal already, now the BlazBlue Online is bridging a bunch of gaps, and it's bringing a lot of really hardcore gamers together that were previously not able to play online.
So, I mean, what you're saying is Street Fighter's better because it has more people online, and the BlazBlue community is going to die out.
No, what I'm saying is that eventually Street Fighter will have everyone play as Ken again, and it will be the most obnoxious thing possible.
It's alright, I already figured out the strategy for that.
And what is it?
Street Fighter's a better game.
K.O.
Even though Street Fighter 4 is awesome, it still did not have an awesome story mode.
Yeah, well, honestly, I don't think people are sitting there playing the story mode over and over again. Most people head online after clearing the story.
Well, you can have fun with a cast that contains 7 of the same character, and they all share similar moves.
This is not Mortal Kombat, sir.
I don't know, but considering that Ken, Ryu, Akuma, Goken, and all of them have almost very similar movesets.
Well, if you'd played the game, you'd know that they're actually very different movesets.
Oh, I know that they're different. Don't you rub this in my face!
Now, if you play Street Fighter just because it's the only one you know about, or you've never really branched out and actually tried looking for other fighting games like I have, give some of the games I mentioned a shot. There's a bunch of fighting games like Melty Blood, Bloody Roar, and Samurai Showdown I've been meaning to try, and entirely new ones like Chaos Code and Genki Bunko Fighting Climax and Under Night In-Birth X-Late are flying under the radar nowadays. And do you know, I've actually played Under Night In-Birth X-Late. Stupid ass name, only 16 characters, never fucking heard of it before.
Second close, divide. なかなか大きくくだらない前へ散れなかなかの腕だ捉えられまい遅いこれで終わりなかなかの腕だついてこれるかなかなかの腕くだらないなんだそれ終わらないよシュート来い遅いくだらん権限の力よ避けろ
I would totally play this over Street Fighter any day. I'm done. Seriously, I've rambled for however long this video is. Too long. I'm done with Street Fighter. I've said my piece. Capcom's just gotta stop making the game. Seriously, Capcom, I know you guys are in the pits because you pulled some really stupid shit again.
You a fan of survival horror games? Have you grown up with things like Silent Hill and Clock Tower and Resident Evil, the Alone in the Dark games? Well, apparently, according to Capcom, nobody loves this kind of shit because they had to compete with the Call of Duty games. You had to go and... How much ammo do I have? Fuck, do I have enough to be able to fight them once? No, I don't. Run! You know, and it's just, it was really all about the atmosphere and just the situations that they put you into. It was fucking amazing. I loved the shit out of it. And to constantly compare your franchise, your game, to Call of Duty. Call of Duty has nothing to fucking do with you at all. This is Resident Evil. What the fuck does Call of Duty have to do with you? Okay, what, that sells a whole bunch? Well, people are fucking jerking their dicks over Angry Birds. Are we suddenly gonna be fucking taking zombies, pulling them back in a little slingshot and flinging them into fucking Stars members? What the fuck, man? The people at Capcom were the ones who went and made survival horror into its own genre, and now all of a sudden they're wanting to go and take that away, saying that it doesn't sell because of Call of Duty. They used that so many fucking times. Get over fucking COD games. I'm sorry, but they have nothing to do with you. We want Resident Evil games. We go to play Resident Evil because that's what we expect is Resident Evil. We don't go and play Resident Evil to see a fucking Me Too first-person shooter clone or a fucking Gears of War clone. It's that fucking simple.
Did you see that, gamers? Clear as a crisping morning. Mighty number 9. Fully funded. Every single goal reached. Just look at all this stuff. All this stuff you gamers, you fellow Mega Man fans helped create. This is just mind-blowing to me. But do you know who doesn't respect us gamers? Do you know who doesn't respect the Blue Bomber and what he represents to gaming? Capcom. First of all, when you canceled Mega Man Legends, that blew us all away. We have petitions asking for you guys to bring it back, and I mean hundreds of thousands of people signing petitions for Mega Man Legends 3. Still didn't bring it back. But you know what the real kicker was? You guys stated that if Mega Man fans showed support for Mega Man Legends, it wouldn't have been canceled. And that came from Capcom of Europe. Look at Mighty Number 9. Not only are gamers supporting a Mega Man title, but they're investing their own damn money to make it real. They said that Mega Man was not in a high enough state or voted high enough in the rankings for what people wanted for them to consider putting him in. That's what one of the producers of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 said. Yeah. Now, if you kept up with that, we know that to be 100% bullshit! Mega Man X, on their own damn poll, was number 1! Number 1! Like Smitty Warburton Jaegerman Jensen, he was number 1! Mega Man X was number 1. Classic Mega Man was number 9, and Mega Man EXE was number 19. 3 Mega Mans made it into the top 20. But the producer of the game says there was not enough Mega Man interest in the polls. No one expected this shitty, stupid, idiotic, classic box art Mega Man. This was the biggest insult to Mega Man fans. It just still blows my mind how badly people want Mega Man in a fighting game. And the people who have to do it is Nintendo.
So, some of you may know this, others may not. Capcom has decided to put a copyright claim on my Street Fighter V video. And here's the thing. Capcom was the one who gave me the video. Capcom themselves sent me, the Angry Joe Show, a press release saying, spread the word about Street Fighter V with your fans. They gave me a link to the press site, which I have press credentials. I logged in. There was all the logos, the PNG logo that I used on my thumbnail. There's the trailer available for download for press. So I downloaded it. They sent me an email, go spread the word. I actually spread the word about Street Fighter V, my own unbiased opinion. And look what happens. Capcom, you're fucking stupid. Absolutely stupid. And you're shooting yourself in the foot. You don't exactly have the greatest reputation amongst gamers with your previous practices, with DLC and on-disc bullshit, all that stuff. So guess what? I tried to put it up, almost immediately it got flagged again as being owned by Capcom. It is not worth it. It's not fucking worth it. Are you that hard up for money right now? Bullshit. Get your head out of your fucking ass. So, since I can't talk about it, I wonder if the assets are flagging it, not just the video. Here, let me put up the logo, the PNG logo for fucking Street Fighter V. See what happens. You gave this to me. You gave this and the fucking trailer to me, and you're flagging my video. Anyway.
But you accomplished so little in Street Fighter that isn't already overlapped to the point of eclipse by other better fighting games that I honestly wish you guys spent your time better. Strider, Breath of Fire, Dragon's Dogma. Oh my gosh, Dragon's Dogma. Please. Please do not make Dragon's Dogma Online require an internet connection. I will kill myself. In fact, why wait to be disappointed?
Open your eyes!
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Game over.
Tutorials! All of these games have them, why not Street Fighter?
I am your instructor, Rachel Alacard. You may refer to me as Master, Your Worship, or Mistress if you are feeling courageous. All of the instructions in this tutorial assume that your character is facing to the right. Should you forget this simple fact, your failure will be absolute and your punishment will be severe. There are many ways to move in Blaze Blue, but let's practice the most basic of movements. Walking forward, walking backward, and crouching. These skills will be invaluable once it comes time to maneuver your character around your opponent. Do find a way to imprint them on that hideous, rotten excuse for a mind. We shall begin with walking forward. Push forward to move toward the sweaty gentleman.
3, 2, 1, action! Excellent!
My goodness. Perhaps you possess some elementary motor control after all.